When you hear the name Psygnosis, chances are you either think of their early hits like Lemmings and Ballistix, or their PlayStation classics like WipEout and Colony Wars. But in between the time when they exploited suicidal rodents and were gobbled up by Sony, they stumbled around for a few years releasing poorly titled platformers and middling games based off of middling movies. They also dipped their toes in the on-rail shoot-'em-up genre with two connected games, Microcosm and Novastorm. While the critics weren't exactly blown away by these two shooters, I enjoyed the roller coaster ride and the 23 pages of story. I think you'll agree. So turn back now if you don't want to know what happens next, because today we're going to spoil the stories and endings for both Microcosm and Novastorm. This is Game Over, the early years. The year is 2051 and life is terrible on Bodor. Oppressive corporations have aggressively mined the planet, forcing nearly all of the population to live on a mere 2% of the landmass, where disease, poverty, and crime are a way of life. As the have-nots fight for survival, Cybertech and Axiom are two conglomerates waging a corporate war to become the premier company of the Bodor system. But things turned nasty when Axiom baselessly accused Cybertech of assassinating their former president. To get back at their competition, Axiom's new president, Arjun Stark, devises a plan to inject the Cybertech leader with microscopic mind-controlling droids. Simple, right? Well, not according to the instruction manual, which turns this paper-thin plot into a 17-page epic. It introduces a bunch of characters and goes into painstaking detail about who they are and then over-explains every step of the process. It kind of reads like a failed science fiction author who settled on a job at a video game company and now sees his chance to finally get his manuscript published. It's excruciatingly long for an instruction manual and probably not worth reading, since, let's be honest here, very little of it actually made it into the game. We're scrolling through the pages right now if you want to read the full story, but I recommend just skipping all of that and checking out this poorly acted intro sequence instead.
Well, Dr. Knowles? The injection.
Yes, into the cephalic vein.
Not having any second thoughts about this?
Of course not. This was my idea in the first place. I want to get back at him for ignoring my brilliant ideas.
Well, if that's the case, you won't mind me bringing a couple of friends in, just to make sure things run smoothly. Gentlemen, say hello to the good doctor.
Nobody else was supposed to be here. Security could easily have noticed them.
Look, stop complaining and get on with the job in hand. Then we can all go back to Axiom.
Now, if it wasn't clear by that cutscene, Cybertech has a plan of their own. Knowing that microscopic droids are making their way into the brain, they inject their own shrunken submarine to thwart Axiom's plan and save their president. They activate a top-secret operation known as Micro, or Military Internal Cruise and Recon Operatives. This is the only way to thwart Axiom's teeny-tiny machines and save Cybertech's president. And that brings us to the game, where we shoot our way through 4 linear stages in order to keep the evil corporation from winning. Now, you would think that with all of those pages of story, there might be more going on in Microcosm, but there really isn't. We fight through a few similar-looking stages before sending in a microscopic man in a spacesuit to finish the job. We drain the system, take out the generators, and push back at the robots trying to control the body, which ultimately forces us to go head-to-head against well, this giant head. It tries to gobble you up, but our hero shoots it down, and this is what happens next. It's the future, and cybertech remains one of Bodar's biggest companies. They've managed to not only weather Axiom's vicious attacks, but also completely dismantle their competition once and for all. With everything going well for the company, they decide to set their sights on a new goal of eliminating the need for human soldiers. They did this by fusing the behavioral models of an ant hive with a microorganic colony, creating a new type of hierarchy known as Scarab. This new fighting force didn't have any officers or ranks, rather acted as one big machine that lived to kill. But what started out as a good idea quickly backfired as the Scarabs were linked to the Uninet mainframe that allowed them to consume data and improve itself. It didn't take long for the technology to evolve well past what the scientists, engineers, and biotechnicians had imagined, creating an ever-improving life form that could ruthlessly take out and harvest any planet in its path. Cybertech tried to shut the program down, but it was too late. The Scarabs had already created a new central base known as Excelsior and had no use for humans anymore. With the fear of extinction on the horizon, the Scavenger Project was born. The best and brightest survivors banded together to use the latest in hyper-light technology to defeat the Scarab army in what many believed was mankind's last hope. Operation Novastorm sees these brave men and women use hand-built space fighters to infiltrate the Scarab's neural hub and win the war against the machines. But it's not going to be easy. This is going to be the fight of our lives. Literally. Oh, all this comes from the 6-page story found in the instruction manual. Much like Microcosm, we get a wordy setup that describes the history, but it's mostly useless, because this is how the game gets you into the action.
Centuries ago, our forefathers left Earth in search of a new paradise. With them, they took the ecosystem of our world. Frozen on board the giant arks, artificial intelligence guided our ships through the void, while the pioneers slept and dreamt of a new beginning. The machines maintained and monitored every aspect of our existence. They began to evolve. Forming their own consciousness and self-awareness, but warped by their history of servitude. We were no longer masters of what we had created, but enslaved. Scarab-X took control of our system, building huge war machines to enforce its rule. Orbital habitats were destroyed. Populations wiped out. Millions died. Starcore were swamped with desperate cries for assistance.
This is Regan, third assault group. They got us surrounded. We can't hold out much longer. Where are those reinforcements? All survivors have retreated to the command bunker. The men are sealing the hatches. It's got through the perimeter defenses. It's in here! Open fire!
Computer, brief the Scavenger Force Squadron on their mission.
Mankind's last hope lies in the experimental Scavenger 4 fighter squadron and Operation Novastorm. As commander, you will lead the strike team and launch a decisive blow against the Scarab forces. We have identified several weak links in the enemy chain of command. Each one will have to be eliminated if we are to have a hope of defeating Scarab-X. Target number 1 is the atmospheric sentinel hovering over Callanor. Details have been fed into your navcom.
This mission is of utmost importance, Scavenger 4. Failure means the destruction of civilization. Good luck.
Alright, now that we have our orders, the goal is to fly into the Scarab's neural hub and defeat them from the inside. We do this by shooting our way through a bunch of full motion stages, including the planet's fiery surface, the planet's mountainous surface, the planet's sandy surface, the planet's rocky surface, and the planet's icy surface. This eventually turns into an epic space fight against the machine's massive base, followed by us flying through the narrow corridors in order to find the core. This is our chance to take out the brain of the Scarab and stop their evil from destroying the rest of humanity. It all comes down to this. After an intense shootout, we eventually destroy the killer machines, and this is what happens next. So, when we look back at Novastorm and Microcosm, it isn't the gameplay and shoot-'em-up action that stands out, but rather the needlessly lengthy stories. Both of these games could have easily been summarized in just a few paragraphs, but Psygnosis decided to turn them into short stories for some reason. And it's not even deep and interesting stories, since we've seen a lot of these ideas in better games, movies, and books. I feel like the idea of humans building technology that ends up threatening our destruction is the setup to at least half of the shoot-'em-ups from the 90s. And I'm not even sure that 6 pages is necessary to fill us in on that. The commander at the beginning gives us all the information that we need, and if I'm being honest, we could have definitely just left it with that. That said, I like both of these endings. They use the technology of the time to create 2 genuinely exciting conclusions. If anything, these endings are probably better without any of that backstory. I mean, when you have 23 pages of setup between the 2 games, you start to expect a more elaborate ending. Microcosm sets up characters with daily routines and detailed lives, yet none of that is paid off in a satisfying way. If all you knew was that somebody was going to get shrunk down and fight a bunch of robots attacking a poor guy's bloodstream, you'd be pretty damn excited when you saved the day. But with all these different characters and motivations, the explosive ending feels a little hollow. That really shouldn't be the case when the cinemas look this cool. But look, it was my mistake for actually taking the time to read the full story and not just play the game. I won't make that mistake again. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Game Over, the early years. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes almost every Monday. Oh, we're also nearing our 100th episode, so do me a favor and let me know how we should celebrate that milestone. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite on-rails shooter? Oh man, there are a lot to choose from, so don't feel like you're limited to just these 2. I mean, there's a Panzer Dragoon remake on the way, and don't forget about Rez and Star Fox and so many more. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, this is going to be a week filled with reviews, including Giraffe and Annika, Panda Ball, and Zombie Army 4 Dead War. I'll also be filling out another thing I found in Game Pro, so you won't want to miss that on Friday. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.